1, 2, 3, 4.
News,
Culture, astronomy,
physics,
humanities,
space,
science, travel,
Boom! Knowledge! Boom! Knowledge!
history,
humor,
technology,
Games.
business.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Boom Knowledge. It's a podcast. I'm actually kind of too tired to give you my usual clever explanation of all the things that this podcast is, but rest assured, I'm doing good stuff. You should totally check it out. Listen to, this episode and the last 10 for confirmation. And why am I so tired? Well, for starters, there has been no shortage of travel and conferencing. I went to San Diego for a big marketing dealio, which was full of the usual hobnobbing with fellow wizards and brain building overall. And I always come back from these things full of ideas that I probably won't have actual time to implement for weeks to come. But at least as important, and probably a lot more so if I'm being honest, was the sun, firing delicious protons at me, or as I like to call them, happiness builders. Allow me to describe just how important that experience was through anecdote. While I was in San Diego, I was pointed to a local Seattle news article which read, and I am quoting verbatim here, "Never-ending gloom? Seattle has had just 3 sunny, mild days since the start of October." Now, rest assured, I think Seattle would place top 3 and possibly even number 1 in any most beautiful summer cities contest. But man, there are times when you feel as a Seattleite, or anyway, if you're me, you feel this way, like, maybe I'm being a bit of a whiner about this whole seasonal affective thing. Psychological evidence and study totally notwithstanding, maybe it's all in my pasty white head. And then you read a headline like that one and feel this unholy mixture of vindication and total despair. So yeah, going to be rocking my I Heart the Sun shirt for the rest of my life. I am never taking that off. Anyway, on Sunday I flew back to Seattle, and rather than just going home, I rented a car and drove south to Aberdeen, which is where my folks are. And I was up and out on Monday morning to get my dad to Olympia, which is an hour away, for knee replacement surgery at 7 a.m. And did I mention that daylight savings time just happened in the States, where we shave an hour off your life for absolutely no good reason in this modern world? I am so happy to have the additional evening light, but it's a bit much when you need to get to a hospital an hour away by 7 a.m., which is really 6 a.m. to your brain. But Dad is doing great, and I'm helping him and Mom out for the rest of the week at least. And what was I saying? Tired. That's right. Me. Sleep. Need more of it. Descent to madness and so forth. So why do I mention all this? Well, if I don't have the usual spring in my vocal step, approaching spring, of course, you will understand why. But also, I simply haven't had as much research time, nor do I have any interviews in the can to upload. I have guests planned, mind you, but it's better when I actually talk to them rather than guessing what they're going to say and recording a mock interview of myself and me just impersonating them. Though that sounds kind of rad now that I've said it. So to quote the great Monty Python, and now for something completely different. I actually haven't done a frag list in a couple of episodes, and so to make up for that, and because I am original content and interview light, and because I'm taking care of my dad this week and jamming from place to place all sleep deprived, this whole episode is going to be one giant frag. And if you're new to the show, the frag list is a random assortment of generally really interesting facts about really interesting things. True stories about truth there. A whole show that's just the frag list? Has he gone crazy? Well, the answer is yes. I think I covered that. Madman Vass is rocking the frag today, okay? So let's roll up this hot mess of an introduction into a blanket, tie the top with a combination of piano wire and zip ties, douse it all in gasoline, haphazardly duct tape a few rolls of C4 to its bulging form, connect one of those demolition wire and plunger thingamajiggies, roll it on out to a mostly safe distance because, whatever, safety third, and 3, 2, 1, it's showtime! Before I started Boom Knowledge, I had a little blog I ran on my personal face pastry page that I called What I Learned This Week. And it was just like it sounds. Any little tidbit of information I heard or read that I thought was interesting, I would enumerate into a list of somewhere between 10 and 30 items. The frag list is essentially what I learned this week in podcast form. So this feels a little bit like coming home. And I'm totally just going to ape the style of the old What I Learned here, so let's do it. Number 1, there are flashes out in space that have been perplexing astronomers for a decade now. They're called fast radio bursts, or FRBs for short, and they originate way the heck beyond our galactic home, the Milky Way. Or in any case, if we have had FRBs closer to our hood, they haven't been discovered as of yet. In fact, in grand total, not many have been noted overall. At this time, we've only cataloged about 20 of these things. They are very, very bright and last only milliseconds. Now, scientists will always start by seeking explanations that line up with natural phenomena before going the extraterrestrial route, which is totally the right approach. Time and again, the weird and the wonderful have proven out to be nature doing its wild and wacky thing, whether we immediately understand the processes involved or otherwise. But there is no natural source yet identified for FRBs, so it's time to get creative. According to Avi Loeb, a theorist at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, any artificial origin is worth contemplating and checking out. Thus, a study in conjunction with lead author Manasvi Lingam has been produced. In it, the pair claim that these signals could be a giant radio transmitter built by intelligent aliens. Why such a device? Possibly to get spacecraft to galactic or even intergalactic transit speeds using light sails. And this is an idea scientists on Earth have explored for humanity's own exploration desires as well. In fact, I even mentioned one such idea back in an earlier episode of Boom Knowledge. Stephen Hawking is backing a project called Breakthrough Starshot, which would use this light sail technology to get us to Alpha Centauri. Now, back to the FRB study, the publishers have even done the math on what it would take to make this thing go. A solar transmitter with a sunlight collector twice the size of Earth and a water cooling mechanism. They took their hypothesis further by calculating the potential number of advanced civilizations in the Milky Way, using current data on number of habitable planets, paired with the assumption that extraterrestrials are responsible for all FTBs. The number they arrived at? 10,000 intelligent civilizations in a galaxy such as ours. Of course, these hypotheses are just that, but we can and absolutely should think big. And it's always a joy to see legitimate researchers from top institutions doing just that. Okay, number 2. Carla in Broomfield, Colorado sent me this next item, which absolutely appeals to my heavy metal horror sensibilities. Well, in all the ways, as you'll see here in a sec. We shall start with the name, the Gum Leaf Skeletonizer. That's a pretty metal moniker right there. Little caterpillar guy who strips off the leaves of eucalyptus gum trees until they are nothing but veins and midribs. Okay, well, maybe that's not the most metal thing ever, just stripping leaves off trees, but check this out. The Skeletonizer also has this horn-looking thing sticking out of its head, which is actually a stack of its own old empty head casings. A pile of its own skulls on its head. The guy wears his own friggin' skulls as a hat. And as if that wasn't metal enough, one researcher pretty confidently believes they do this to thwart predator attacks, meaning he prolongs or perhaps even saves his life in battle by wearing a self-skull helmet. Double devil horn hails to thee, Skeletonizer. I hope your caterpillar kind celebrate their victories in the halls of Valhalla. All right, number 3. This one's all about flying, fear of flying, and the very, 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 very highly unlikely event of crashing. Okay, by way of preface, Henry Rollins did a spoken word piece many years ago that continues to resonate with me to this day. He used to be a total white-knuckle passenger, freaking out with every flight. And that was me too. Happened to read about a crash way back in the day, and then I worked with a guy who even went down, and damn, it just really did my head in. But just like Hank, that fear got squashed out of me through many miles clocked. He flew all the time, and over all those sessions, the anxiety just sort of evaporated. Well, same here. He also talked about how much he loves Thin Lizzy's Phil Lynott on that album, which makes multiple things that Hank and I have in common. And I'm guessing there's a lot more beyond that, but I digress. I was reminded on my recent flight, just last Sunday in fact, that many people still are faced with this abject terror in the skies. But my friend Pilar, who is a rad human working for me these days, keyed me into a thing she uses as a fearful passenger. Technology can absolutely help. It's an application for the phone called Am I Going Down? And it's a really cool idea. It utilizes aviation statistics to assuage your fear of flying. You simply enter the data about your flight, departure city, destination city, airline, and so forth, and it tells you the chances of going down and how many years you would need to fly every single day before you'd hit the worst lotto ever. On mine and Pilar's flight, it was a 1 in nearly 4 million chance that we would possibly hit the ground. Well, the wrong way anyway. And we would have to fly every day for over 11,000 years before that became a real possibility. Now, the effectivity of that information to calm your nerves is really predicated on your personality. I mean, people really believe in their heart that they're going to win the fun lotto, even when the odds are much greater than the ones I just quoted. But for others, including my friend Pilar, this is a very effective tool. Coincidentally, and through no prompting whatsoever, my friend Anne sent me another related tidbit of information. Apparently, the right approach when assuming a crash position is to, rather than interlocking your fingers behind your head, instead place your dominant hand in a fist beneath the other. The theory is you're more likely to injure one hand rather than both if you apply this strategy, which of course is a lot to remember if you're in that situation. I feel like I'd be lucky to remember not to just, completely pee myself or something. But hey, I only have something like a 1 in 4 million chance of ever having to worry about it. And I really like those odds. All right, number 4. The International Space Station is scheduled to receive a box full of cold come August. And not just cold, but the absolute coldest of the cold in the history of Freezy Town. Atoms frozen to less than 1/1000th of a degree above absolute zero, thanks to human science and ingenuity, are heading up to space. A vacuum chamber, lasers, and electromagnetic knife are involved. Talk about your all-time fun space toys. The ice chest-sized experiment is called CAL, or Cold Atom Laboratory. It will slow down gas particles to the point that they are very close to motionless. And that motion is the important part, because temperature is actually a measurement of motion at the atomic level. Of course, the next logical question is, why bother? And beyond the initial bothering, why bother in space specifically? Well, the experiments with hypercold atoms will give scientists and humanity as a whole further insights into the fundamentals of gravity and matter, and might even help to detect dark energy. Now, I've mentioned dark energy on the show before. This is a force driving the expansion of the universe that we can measure, yet we have zero clue about what it really is. Which is crazy because it makes up the largest percent of the universe, 68% in fact. Now, these experiments in cold could also lead to improvements in atomic clocks, spacecraft navigation, and quantum computing. Ooh, quantum computing. The world is poised to shift yet again as a function of computers thousands of times faster than the fastest supercomputers, and 100 million times faster than our personal computers. Can you imagine having a laptop that is 100 million times faster than your current one? Let's just let that sink in for a second. So why do the cold experiment in space specifically? Well, the answer is to try to get these cold, nearly motionless atomic states for as long as possible. The trouble is, Earth's gravity pulls everything in towards the planet, and hitting that near absolute zero point is very, very challenging on the ground, with the closest results only lasting for a fraction of a second. But up in space where there is no gravity, scientists believe that they can achieve this for 5 to 10 seconds. Much, much, much more data to work with there. All right, number 5. Speaking of NASA, my favorite government agency by a lot. Well, they've proposed a new wild theory for how to give Mars its atmosphere again and make it a potentially habitable place. As part of the Planetary Science Vision 2050 workshop, which I must say I would love to get an invite to, but only panelists and presenters are allowed to go. Anyway, Jim Green, NASA's Planetary Science Division director, presented the idea that an artificial magnetosphere could be launched into space and placed between Mars and the Sun. It would shield the red planet, much as our own magnetic field shields the Earth. And the result would be an elimination of solar winds, the same solar winds that would have stripped Mars's atmosphere in the ancient past. Over time, the idea is that the Martian atmosphere would grow in pressure and temperature within a few years. As the atmosphere becomes thicker, the climate would get warmer, which would melt carbon dioxide in the northern polar ice cap. That would help to trap heat and trigger a greenhouse effect. And that could mean melted water ice and subsequent rivers and oceans. The team theorizes that this would allow for some habitability within a couple of generations. Now, of course, all of this is in the extreme hypothetical phase at the moment. To my mind, though, as someone who watches this world very carefully, NASA is pretty much knocking it out of the park with new ideas. A giant space magnetic shield is truly out-of-the-box thinking. We probably won't see a habitable Mars in our lifetime, unless we fix aging, of course, another area of study receiving not only serious scientific analysis, but also mountains of cash right now. And for more on that, listen to my prior podcast entitled, We All Gotta Go Sometime. All right, number 6. The man who brought us the lithium-ion battery, John Goodenough, has invented a new solid-state battery. It is 3 times the energy storage, has much better overall longevity, can be charged faster, and doesn't have the potential to explode like current lithium-ion batteries do. And all that is cool enough in and of itself, but to me the best part is that Professor Goodenough is 94 years old. He helped shape the world back in 1980, then many years older than I am now, and bam! New invention at 94. And there's an incredible lesson here, especially for all of the getting old, so old, too old folks in the world. Sorry to get heavy here, but your best years are only behind you if that's what you firmly believe. As for me, well, I've lived an awesome life so far, and my best years are definitely yet to come. Number 7, coming from Nate in Boise, Idaho, who I think must have heard me talking in my prior episode about how I am currently single and childless, which, for the record, does have its perks. I'm able to purchase, by way of example, fine Gothic jewelry from Paris. And I mean that literally. I bought myself an exceptionally beautiful silver ring when I was in Paris that had skulls all over it, on account of I don't grow out of certain things. Would I have purchased a €100 ring for myself if I were married with 2 kids? Well, it's hard to say, but in my current state, no question at all. Well, anyway, Nate pointed me to a study whose findings seem to suggest parenthood is associated with longer life than childlessness. So that is a big, broad statement, and I know at least a couple of pairs of parents who would tell you that is completely counterintuitive. But here's the data. The researchers tracked the lifespan of a study group aged 60 and above, with birth dates between 1911 and 1925 in Sweden. So let's just pause there. Sweden is a lot different than the United States, where still the majority of my listeners are. Their geographic, education, population, overall life expectancy, and all kinds of other differences between their country and ours. And also, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but their metal bands are a lot different than ours as well, with great advances in death, black, melodic black, Viking, doom, just to name a few. And I mean, Yngwie Malmsteen comes from Sweden, and that dude practically invented neoclassical guitar, and they brought us Opeth, Amon Amarth, Catatonia, Candlemass. I love me some United States metal too, but Sweden definitely gets points for distinction in their bands. And what does that have to do with this article? Nothing. I just wanted an excuse to talk about Swedish metal for a second. So the study did take into account other influential factors, and when everything washed out, bottom line, people who were older than 60 appeared to get about 2 extra years. If you're looking to extend your life, kids probably aren't your surest bet. Diet, exercise, blah, 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 blah. Listening to Swedish metal probably gives you at least another 3 years. All kinds of ways to do it. Okay, which number are we on? Right, number 8. Cynthia in Chicago pointed my attention to this last item, which actually is making serious rounds everywhere, and for good reason. Time crystals. No, not those things in the excellent Time Splitters video game franchise. Man, I miss those games. And no, not the Time Crystal, a 1981 Ron Howard film you probably have never seen or even heard of. And I'll take a pass on the Doctor Who and Power Rangers references because everyone else is handling those. Time crystals are, well, actually, they're not easy to describe. Let's start with some simple facts. They are a new state of matter, theorized back in 2012 by MIT physicist and Nobel laureate Frank Wilczek. Thanks to a paper published in the journal Nature, coming from both a team at Harvard and another at the University of Maryland, it is believed that time crystals can actually exist. Now, as far as we know, this new state of matter doesn't happen on its own, but it can be created in a lab by adding laser and microwave pulses. The result is matter that exhibits quantum properties only theorized before, a whole new type of stuff. So, beyond a cool name, why do we care? Well, a new class of matter is very exciting to physicists, full stop. It's a whole realm of possibility to play with that humanity simply did not have access to prior. Time crystals have properties that change in, as the name would lead you to believe, time rather than space. And that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities in controlling, for example, quantum bits, again for quantum computers. Now, additional practical applications remain to be seen, but they could certainly be teased out over time. I can't believe I just said that. And there you have it, the inevitable end of another episode of Boom Knowledge. And 8 is the magic number of items I have because, well, I gotta get back to fixing toilets and going shopping and doing tasks and all the other things a good son does for his dad when he's just had major knee surgery. Check out my show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Check out my website at www.boomknow.com. Shoot me a mail if you so desire at mike@boomknow.com. And I'm incredibly responsive and love to hear from listeners, be it to make a suggestion for the show, submit a potential topic, provide critical, one manly tear-inducing feedback, or just to say hello. Have a great rest of your week. Adjust well to your lost hour, keep smiling, enjoy the extra light, and I will almost undoubtedly see you on Friday, parental care notwithstanding, of course. There you have it. See you again in the future.
Boom Knowledge.